law enforcement and military are two separate challenges. I think military, it's when I was overseas fighting, I think that the challenges were quite apparent there. Was, I fought Al Qaeda before, I fought Taliban. They're two separate challenges. And the battlefield and always going through those training cycles, getting prepared, going over, deploying. I think that the challenges were how much time I could spend at home, fearing whether or not I would make it back from deployment, just that fear and anxiety, all that from obviously the military side. But I think law enforcement, I think the challenge was a little bit different. I think that how can I help the Americans here? When you're military, you're not really looked on the inside. You don't look on the military or helping the citizens here. We were more worried about the threats overseas. When I was back here as law enforcement, I was focused in on trying to stop domestic violence a lot, or trying to help out families, stay together instead of break apart. How do I help, somebody who's got suicidal ideation, getting them to the hospital? These crazy scenarios. You'd never be ready for a law enforcement scenario. Like, everything's different on a daily basis. At least with military, things are structured to where you kind of know what's going to happen on a daily basis. Even if you're in a firefight, you kind of know, like, hey, you're fighting your enemy. Over here in law enforcement, you never know what kind of call you're going to get. You never know what's going to happen when you arrive on scene. It was a really interesting time frame, I'll tell you that. I learned a lot from both. And how I overcame it, I think law enforcement, the military side helped me overcome anything I faced. I think it's what kept me level-headed because, as I said, I was in really heavy firefights with Taliban. I think when I was back here in the United States, I never really had to unholster, but I've never really felt in any scenario I had that I needed to escalate, or I could literally talk myself out of situations where people wanted to be drunk at a bar and wanted to fight, outside. I de-escalated to be like, talk to them like a human, bring them back down. I think that military bearing and that military discipline kind of helped me out to be like, because it's funny, because I would see other officers that never had that military side where they would just be like, they'd be doing the most. They would go from 0 to 100, and here's me where I stay at 0 all the time, even in hectic situations where I'm just like, oh, okay, well, I don't know how to explain that kind of feeling. But military-wise, I think, it was always a purpose. It was always, what kept me going in the military was I would go, when I was in training, I would always go from breakfast to lunch to dinner, right? While you're going through all that pain of training. When I was overseas, I would go from a month to looking at different things from like a month to, hey, I'll be home maybe by December or whatever it is. But I would always kind of break it out to be like time that would get me through things. Because, as the Marines saying is pain is always temporary, right? So there's always an end to it.